on the image, you can see the kind of the framework that they have. So to be involved in an activity, first you need to be aware, right, that that activity exists. So if you are a newcomer, let's say here in Ottawa, and you don't know that you can play soccer, then you won't be involved in that activity. So the first part basically is the awareness. And then as well, your first experience, your first involvement, right? If you have a good experience, chances are that you will want to stay more in the sport, to be more engaged, to be more physical active. So these parts are really important at the beginning. And then we have, and this is at any age actually that it happens, okay? And then if we look into building the foundations, we have different stages of, let's say, training. So the first one is active start, so it begins when you're born till 6 years old. So here basically you want to be more of a discovery aspect, where you can kind of learn and master basic human movements, right? Like walking a little bit, having a good balance. You want to be as well be balanced not only on the ground, let's say on the surface, on the concrete, on the grass, but also on ice, water, being in the water, on the snow as well. You want to be able to manipulate objects, so just touching different things, balls, pencils, whatever. That's basically the active start, and everything is about playing and discovering. So it's not like structural training, it's really just playing games. Then you have fundamentals. Here at this point we don't really separate boys and girls, but because of their maturation, girls develop faster. So that's why they say like between 6 and 8 years old, girls will be in the fundamental stage and boys will be in during the 6 and 9 years old in this stage. So in the fundamentals, like the name says, is everything about fun and get your fundamental movement skills. So here we're talking about the ABCs, ability of agility, coordination, balance. We're also talking about being able to run, to jump, to crawl, to do cartwheels, to swim, to catch, and building a little bit of physical capacity. Okay, so the fundamentals are the fundamental movements of just moving around the space and being comfortable with your body on how you're moving it. Then we have learn to train, that is about mainly learning about sports and the skills for the sports. So here we have, we're working about physical capacity, flexibility. Here now we're working more about speed as well, movement speeds. So how fast can you move your arm? How fast can you swing your leg to kick the ball? And you can start integrating here warm-ups, cool-downs, and periodization as well. So think about it like what age group you're training. So if you're mainly on the fundamentals, you don't really need to do warm-ups. But once you start here at the 9, 8 years old, that's when you start incorporating warm-ups and cool-downs to have a more structured training. Then we have the train to train. This is super important stage. Mainly as a coach, you have a big impact on the athletes. So here you'll see that either athletes will stay in the sport or they will drop out. So if they don't have a positive impact, if you don't manage to get a positive impact on them, on having them more engaged and motivated, well, they will be dropping sports and probably they won't be active afterwards when they're adults. So here is, I think as a coach, is really important when we work in this stage. So basically here again, we're working on getting the major fitness development. So aerobic fitness, strength, and again, periodizations. Then you have train to compete. So this is for soccer mainly, because at this stage is when players get a chance to be either in provincial teams, national teams, going to World Cups, U17s, U17s, and doing a lot of as well, maybe OFSAs at high schools, right? So it's a little bit more of a competition here. So we want to maximize the development in all aspects: mental, technique, tactical, physical, and we also want to bring a balance for their life, right? It's not everything about sports. It's also about having a balance in school, doing great at school, having a good attitude at home as well. So balancing everything. And the last one is trying to win. So optimizing the performance, maintaining the skills. And these are mainly athletes that go to the Olympics, World Cups, national teams. But we'll be mainly be like, I think, part of fundamental till train to compete. So we're working here in train to compete for players that mean, like, if you get players that want to play at the university level, we need to help them in that aspects as well. So by knowing that and the ages, what we need to train on them, there are some windows of opportunities to work on certain aspects. So in these windows, basically, we train them in this specific age, let's say, or range of age, because that's where they're going to have their best adaptation, and it'll be faster as well. So let's say if we're working on stamina, on endurance, so for the girls here, you have the rate growth, right? So how they're growing here, you see it decreases because basically they're not growing that much in this phase. But now when they get at 11 years old, they start growing really fast. And then the peak high velocity here will be the highest percentage of their like growth in height, basically. The fastest one they get, and then they drop again. So again, here in the stamina, let's say you work in this area because you know you'll have the best adaptations, physiological adaptations for their development. So those are the windows of opportunities that they call them. So in stamina, we have two difference. We have aerobic capacity, that is basically the endurance of running like for a long time, doing an effort for a really long time. And then you have aerobic power, which is mainly having that effort, but at high intensity for a few minutes, like 2 to 10 minutes, but at a high intensity. Instead of keeping like the same in like level, medium, moderate intensity, this is high intensity. Then we have strength. So for the girls here is after they have their peak height velocity, and then you can also train it after they have their first menstruation. So this is kind of interesting, actually. I was reading a study about this one. Female players, when you work strength, you do strength training, they have a faster recovery and adaptation after they get like after they finish their bleeding cycle, let's say. So that's why here is an important window to start training the strength for girls, and for boys basically is after 12 and 18 months after the peak high velocity. So they are still, it's also because of hormones here that you want to train it after. They're kind of getting used to as well to their bodies, and the levels of the hormones are kind of going up and down, and so they're trying to get into normal levels. Then speeds, we have again two windows, here and here, and again for boys same thing. And basically we're training speed in these areas because as the muscle and the bones are growing, so they're stretching, right? So you have your muscles stretching, and that's where you can get more neural motors, transmitters as well engaged to develop, and also you can define fibers for your muscles. So you have fast fibers and slow ones. Fast ones are basically for acceleration, velocity, speed, and slow ones are more about endurance. So that's where you can define them, create more fibers as well as neuronal transmissions for them. And then we have the skills. You want to do it before they get that growth spurt, mainly because once they are growing and changing their body, they get quite awkward and clumsy, right? So if you want to develop the skills, it won't work that well. So it's better to do it before. And afterwards, with the muscle memory, it will come once they're done their growth. They'll remember everything afterwards. And then suppleness, basically flexibility. You want basically to train it always, right? Especially here during the puberty, because again, they're kind of stretching everything. So you want to be able to get that good range of motion as well. So once we have these windows of opportunities, we can talk about athletic abilities. So here I have a small document. It's in French because I only had it in French. I took my course in French, this one, so that's why it's in French. But just I'm going to explain it quickly. You have here the age, so 6, 7, 8, 9 till 20. And then here you have the athletics qualities or abilities, right? They're more specific right now in here. And then you have F for girls, right? And G for boys. You have sad face when you shouldn't train these abilities. And then you have happy faces when you should, when it's actually your window of opportunities. Then here in black, you have basically, it just means that you still need to train it depending on the sports that you're doing. So let's say soccer, we work a lot on speed. So you should keep working here speeds with them. And then here in gray, the gray boxes, you can start working on these abilities, but they are not the priority. You should prioritize other ones, okay? So I have put here the definition of each quality and athletic ability. So it's at the same order, just in case you don't know French. I just have it here. So like I told you, aerobic power, that is maintaining the effort for a short period, a high intense effort. Aerobic capacity is just being able, let's say in soccer, to run 90 minutes without getting tired. Endurance speed, this is the ability of maintain maximal speed as long as possible. So let's say here maybe it would be you have a striker that got into a breakaway and you're the defender and you're sprinting like super fast to catch him, but you're kind of behind him, right? So you're just going for a few seconds sprinting at your max speed. So that would be maybe an example for this one. Then you have a strength endurance, is the ability to contract that muscle at maximal intensity, really like repetitively, right? So here, an example would be changing directions, right? We're always changing direction in soccer. So that, and to change that direction, you have to use a certain force to stop and then to push off to go to the other side. So that would be one of the examples. Then you have maximal strength, which is basically the force you can produce, the maximal force you can produce. So regarding soccer, we use it every time, but in a more like gym, let's say strength concept, it'll be how much can you lift on a bench press? How much can you hold on a squat, on a barbell squat? Let's say, can you hold like 20 kilos, 50 kilos? What's your maximal? So that's just maximal strength. Then you have the strength speed. This is your power. So it will be something like jumping, right? Jumping, you need that power to get up in the air. Flexibility, then, you know, is about range of motion, how flexible you can be. Then you have speed, how fast you can, let's say, sprint, your distance, how fast can you go? And then let's go here. Then we have agility, balance, coordination, ABC. In agility, basically is the ability to move quickly and precisely without difficulties. So let's say the thing is, like, people normally say agility and they consider that a change of direction, but I think it should be two different aspects, right? Because you have change of directions is based on something that you're planned. So let's say you're doing a training and you have two cones, they need to sprint, let's say 5 meters, and then you have a third cone going to the right side. So they need to change the direction. They go forward and then to the right. This is planned. So this is change of direction. But now let's say you have an exercise where they need to sprint, and then you leave a red penny and a blue penny. And then if it's the red one, they need to go to the right side. If it's the blue, they need to go to the left side. So now they are reacting to something, and that's real agility, right? You're reacting to something. So in a game, we're always reacting to something. So let's say you're dribbling the ball and there's the defender coming at you. You need to react to decide what you're going to do, what move you're going to do to beat him, right? To get past him and keep going. So that's agility mainly. So remember two stuff: agility based on stimulus and change of direction based that is planned. Then you have a balance. So again, three different types of balance: static, dynamic, and controlling an object. So static, basically, you're in a stable environment and you're controlling your position. Dynamic, you're controlling your movement, stabilizing your muscles as well. So this could be something like you're jumping in the air. You need to stabilize yourself so you're not kind of in the air, moving around. And as well, when you land, your landing should be you're controlling your balance when you land, right? If you don't have a good balance control, you're going to fall. If you have a good one, you're going to stay on your feet. And then control even on an object will be dribbling the ball. You're running with the ball and you're keeping your balance at the same time. And then we have coordination, which is the ability to perform a movement in the right order, right pattern. So let's say you want to do a drop kick from the goalkeeper. So what would be the pattern? Is it first letting the ball drop and then you swing your leg, or you're swinging your leg first and then you're dropping the ball? So that will be a coordination as well when you kick, coordinating your arm with your leg, right? The opposite one, so you can swing and move this way. So that's coordination. Then I didn't add here in the descriptions, in the definitions, the technical skills, but I think we all know them in soccer, right? We have some basic skills and some advanced skills. So basic skills will be dribbling, passing, probably shooting, and then more advanced skills could be volleying the ball, diving headers, something like that. So in the tactics and decision making, this is more cognitively, more mental aspects that we'll be working, right? So we need to be able to read and react to a situation, and our response to that situation needs to bring us an advantage in the game, in the competition. We also need to have many, let's say you have one situation and you can have many responses from that situation, many solutions to that problem. That's another aspect that we need to train. And we also need to train, for example, being able to switch that response, that the response that we have. So we have a problem, we know we have many solutions, but let's say I'm picking one solution A, but then I figure out during the moment, yeah, this is not a good option. So maybe I'm going to switch and pick solution B now. So switching in between solutions for a certain situation is also another aspect that we train. And the last one that I just skip is to recognize the signs from the opponent, what they are doing, and grab and decide the best situation, the best solution against those that environment that we're in, right? So it would be, let's say, we're in a 1v1 situation. They are coming at us. What would be the best solution at that moment? Do we leave him come to us, or do we push him to the side? So that would be one decision making that we need to train with our players. So now that we know all of this, why do you think it's important to do a physical preparation? You can write on the chat or just use your mic, that's fine. So physical preparation, right? So we know that the game demands in soccer are really, well, not specific, but it's a high demand, right? The physical demand. So for example, here I had some statistics from pro athletes, pro players, elite soccer players. So a player runs about 10 to 12 kilometers in average in an intensity that is close to the anaerobic threshold. So basically between 80 to 90% of the maximal heart rate. So that's a lot of running, also at a high intensity. So anaerobic threshold basically is the balance, is basically that small line when you can create enough energy and at the same time recycle all the lactate that you're creating from that energy, right? At the moment that you're above that line, then you're creating more lactate. So you have acid lactic in your muscles, and that's why you start getting tired at the same time. So here they're just like on that threshold where they can manage to keep that balance. Also, we know that during a game, the second half, the intensity and the distance cover is reduced. We do about 1,000 to 1,400 actions per game, every 4 to 6 seconds. So these actions could be sprinting, high intensity running, involvements with the ball like passing, tackling, heading. There's a lot of change of pace, so change of speed, right? So like I told you, there's a lot of explosive movements, lots of them: jumping, kicking, tackling, turning, sprinting, changing that pace. And well, we can see that in games, the teams that manage to do these type of explosive movements more and more effectively will most of the time win games, right? And they have a good like anaerobic energy as well. But we need to keep in mind that these are just numbers, and it could be that a team or a player, they're in this range of numbers, but it doesn't mean that they're doing a good game. It doesn't mean that they will win the game, right? Everything else, well, it depends about how effective you're when you're playing. So maybe you can see the stats even like when you watch a game, you have a team that has, I don't know, like 70 or 80% of possession of the ball, and they have about 10 shots on goal, but 0 goals. And then you have the other team, they of course have less possession, and they only have 2 chances, and they score one of those 2 chances. And they're the team that won, right? So really, we need to think about the effectiveness as well, how we're working with our teams. And then we have strength and power are as important as endurance, because with that power and that strength, you're creating ground force when you're running, which can improve your speed, your acceleration, your velocity, your sprinting, your turning, your stopping and switching direction at the same time, right? So everything is like in the physical aspect, everything is connected in some way. Everything can improve something a little bit more. And of course, if we do strength training, we can reduce the injury rates by 50%. So that's really important, especially with players that tend to get injured often. We need to work on those strengthening the muscles, the joints, to avoid those injuries, especially girls, right? The LCL, injury in the knees, the ligaments, is really important because how they're using the muscles. So we need to strengthen all that area of around the knee and the muscles. So about creating a motivating exercise. So basically, there's different components. We have 5 different, but let's say you don't need to have all of them to create a motivating exercise. You could have one of them and it should be enough. So first, it has to be original, your exercise. So in this sense, it needs to be surprising for the player. It needs to be something new for them. You also need one other option will be effective load. So having something that dares the player to do, something that they will overcome the difficulty. It also has to have a meaning to the aim of the exercise, right? Let's say you're doing a sprinting running exercise because you want to improve the sprinting and you're doing a competition, kind of a rap relay. And then if the winner of the relay is the one that managed to catch the ball, then there's no connection, right? There's no meaning for the player. Like they could think I'm the fastest one, but I'm not winning because I cannot catch the ball. So think about having that connection and that meaning as well when you want to create exercises. It has to be as well welcoming and opening, right? So there has to be some progression. So you start on something and then you progress. So if you're doing headers, again, at one point, if you're just doing headers, the same ones, players won't be motivated anymore. So maybe add a progression that would be diving headers or jumping headers. And then you'll see it change everything. The motivation comes up again and they still want to train. And the last component would be being dynamic. So having some intensity, making sure they are moving. So those are the 5 components of motivating exercises. So think about this when you plan as well your sessions. Like, okay, let's try a new exercise. How can I do this? Okay, let's think about the components, which ones I want to use. So the last part will be periodization. So periodization is basically it's an annual or seasonal plan to make sure that you can improve the performance of the player in an optimal way at the right time. So there are certain competitions that are more important and you want them to be at that top level during those competitions so they can perform well. So that's why we use periodizations. It also connects to the long-term development of the athlete. So we need to think about as well in which stage they are, in which level, and what do we need to develop at that stage for them. It helps you as well, like consider the workload of your training based on feedback from the players regarding intensity and their exertions. So the effort they put into work. you ask for feedback, and you can also see when they're training, okay, maybe this was too intense for them for today, so next session will be more about volume, more relaxed in some way. It also helps you do some set some priorities and objectives. We don't want to have 100 objectives, because honestly, in a season, you won't be able to fulfill all of them, right? So we need to make sure we have certain objectives based on their development and not based on the results of the season of the game, right? On being number one. Right now, we're working about development all the time, and it helps you as well set priorities. We need to take into consideration that we need to be flexible as well. An annual season plan can change from the beginning till the end. It changes every time based on your training, based on your on the athlete or your player's level as well. It keeps changing. So something you started doing, let's say you had your plan, your big overview, but then maybe halfway you're like, okay, my players are ready to step it up, so I'm going to change now this part of the program and the intensity and what I want to develop now. So yeah, be flexible about it. So this next slide is basically an annual cycle. So you have microcycles is a big portion. So it's composed of 3 periods: preparation, competition, and transition. So when we have beginner athletes or players, normally you do one microcycle. With top level athletes, you can do 2 microcycles per season, or even 3 microcycles. But these are athletes that are really, really trained, and they are used to doing this type of trainings as well. So basically, periods are set to help you having a progression through the year, and to have players at their optimal level during the competition, right? Each period is composed of phases. So here, for example, we have the general preparation phase, then the specific preparation phase, and then in the competition, we have the pre-competition and competition phase. And the transition basically is about recovering and avoid the detraining, right? So losing everything that you train, just lose everything. We want to avoid that. That's why we do a transition period where they're having an active recovery. Then in each phase, we have mesocycles. Again, you have conditioning, general base, and specific base for the preparation. And then competition will be mainly the same ones as the phases for the mesocycles: pre-competition, competition, tapering, and you could have again competition. So just here, tapering is basically you're reducing. What we want to achieve with the tapering is to reduce, let's say, the volume, basically have them recover in some way without losing their every ability and capacity. So once they are out of the tapering phase or a mesocycle, they can be again at their top level for the competition mesocycles. Okay. Then within each mesocycle, we have the microcycles. So microcycles are just weeks. So here it would be 1 week. This is another week, another week, another week. Okay, microcycle, basically week. And then within each microcycle, you have sessions. So in this first microcycle, we have 2 sessions. And again, we have 2 sessions. But let's say here in the tapering, in this microcycle, we have 3 sessions. Okay, so these are just the sessions afterwards. Let's see. Oh, here. So I have here a graph, so you can see the athletic form of your athlete or player. So in the preparation phase, everything is about acquiring and developing the base. Well, here in the general, it will be the general aspects of the physical components, and in specific, it will become more specific and more related to the sport. And then on the competition period, you want to consolidate, refine, and integrate the physical qualities, technical, tacticals, and mental, as well as skills. So pre-competition, this one is mainly you want to simulate your competition. So start getting as close as you can to an intensity that is close to the competition, and then competition will be maintaining most of the time that level, sometimes refining it. And then we have transition. We can see the level slightly drops because we're having our recovery, right? So we don't need to have it intense or high volume in this part. And then if you have another microcycle, let's say here, you will start everything all over again: preparation, competition, and transition. So if we look at the volume and intensity, we could see at the beginning, in the preparation phase, the volumes increase, right? And then kind of between the general and the specific, it stabilizes and then it drops. Here, when it drops, the intensity increases progressively, okay? Because like I told you on the previous slide, we want to start getting as close as possible to the competition intensity, to the rhythm, to simulate that competition so we can be at our top level. So you can see here kind of the intensity goes here up and down, comes down in the transition phase. So we need to play with the intensity and volume all the time. So then you may wonder, okay, now I know this, I need to play with intensity, volume, workloads. How can I do this in my sessions? So you can do this, first of all, with the space that you have, right? So for example, you have a 2v2 in a 15-yard box compared to a 7v7 on a half pitch. Which one will be more intense? Well, I think it will be the 2v2, right? Because the space is smaller, so you need to move faster as well. Compared to a half pitch is bigger, and for the ratio of the amount of players, well, they have more space to move around. So this one will be more intense than the 7v7. So play with the space. Depending on the session, maybe you have your session and you see, okay, it's not as intense as I would like to. So during the same session, just reduce your space, your squares, make it smaller, and then see what happens. Everything about coaching is about learning, doing mistakes, and then learn from them and be flexible and adapt. So you have here players as well. You can play with the number of players. You can have, if you have lots of players, maybe you'll work more in the intensity, but more cognitively, right? And mental, because they need to be aware of everything. Compare if there's only 2 players, 4 players, then they don't need to worry that much on that aspects. So that's another way you could work with the intensity and volume. Then you can also add constraints. So you can limit the amount of touches or the amount of time. So let's say you're doing a possession game, and then you see that your players are taking too much time to pass the ball. So because you want to make it go faster, you're going to tell them, okay, so now you only have 2 seconds to pass the ball, and you'll see players going faster now, touching, moving, right? So play with the constraints. You can also play with the format, right? So you want to do a phase of play. that might be low intensity, but then if you want to increase that intensity, you do a wave practice. So a wave practice, basically you have your pitch, 2 goals, and you have one team in one side, one team on the other. So let's say you're doing 3v3, and then the other players are outside of the field on each goal line. So the first team goes, let's say the first 2 teams, one is defending, one is attacking. If the attacking team managed to score, those players that were defending, they go out, and the new team comes in, and now that team is attacking, and the first team now is defending. Okay, so you're constantly moving from one side to the other, switching your transitions and switching players and speed. It could be also like king of the court, right? You give the team 2 minutes to score, small space, 2 goals, 3v3. The first team that scores stays on the pitch. The other ones, they keep switching. That's another way to have intensity. And then you can also add like multiple balls, multiple tasks, multiple goals as well, so they can score anywhere. So yeah, we need to be a little bit creative as well sometimes. So in this one, I did a periodization, and I added here what you need to develop, which physical capacity you need to develop, as well as technical, tactical, and mental aspects. Okay, so this is in general how you do it, like when you want to develop it, but also remember about the stages of athlete development, right? So if you have I think it's 10 years old athlete, you won't like train right now the team tactics, right? You won't do lots of tactical aspects, so you don't need to have this part. You maybe will have more ABCs, basic technical skills, right? And same here in the physical aspects. Right now here, hypertrophy, so bringing those high muscles, creating muscle. I just had it here, but I think right now with our athletes, because we're doing like this new process of development, let's say, it's not right now necessary to think about it. You can still work on strength for sure, doing body weight exercise, ball work exercise as well, like med balls or resistant bands. That's possible. But I'm not really right now trying to look at working, let's say, on weights, right? Because we want them to have the right technique first. So we'll send you, I think, the PowerPoint afterwards, but you can see here, you have different stages. So you have the learn where you're going to start learning the new skill. Then the develop basically is to improve that skill. Consolidate basically is to stabilize your ability and capacity, kind of to have a good control on everything. Then you want to refine it, which is making automatic the action. So passing, now you don't need to think about, okay, I need to open my hip, turn my foot, hit it with the inside part. It comes really natural to you now. Then you want to maintain, which is keep up the level up, and then integrate, which would be combining the different abilities and capacities. So when I put here, let's say, a line, so I have here, let's say, consolidate and integrate. So here you're working in these aspects. So maybe you could be here in consolidate, or maybe you could be already here in maintaining, okay? So just for you to understand, here learn and development, well, it will depend on your levels, on your player's level and the age as well. And same here in maintaining and integrating, depending on the objectives that you have and your players. And I have here at the end the volume and the intensity as well, just for you as a reference. So now, I think this is the last slide. So what do we need to consider now that we're going back to, well, we're not going back to the field right now, but when we go, we need to think, well, I would like you actually to think about the first 2 months as a preparation period. So use what I told you today and what you learned to create that preparation period. So just as a small reminder, we want to work on general physical training, right? Endurance, coordination, balance, motor skill, flexibility, strength, and then afterwards work on more specific aspects like speed, agility, reaction, and keep working on the ones here on top. We want to create good foundations, right? So we want everyone to start going kind of, well, not do the same thing because we all have different ways of coaching, but having a little bit of the same methodological aspects when we train, the same ideas and the same concepts. Again, work mainly on volume, on repetitions, instead of high intensity at the beginning. We don't know how our players are coming back, if they're motivated, if they've been active. We have no idea, right? So if we have them doing a high intensity training, we're going to break them. So really work mainly volume, make it fun as well for them so they can enjoy creative, and think as well about the windows of opportunities, the age that you have, that you're working with, and the level. And yeah, so that's it. I think the physical aspects as well, you can work them in the warm-up during sessions or cool down, okay? Cool down will be mainly about flexibility and some mental aspects that you can work as well, like breathing, working on visualization, relaxation as well. Yeah, and how you can create your sessions. Well, think about activities that you liked when you were a kid, right? Play-like activities like tag. Okay, I know right now because of COVID we cannot play tag and we cannot get close together, but you can have some modifications like tic-tac-toe. You can play that. A sort of duck duck goose as well could be an option. So everything is as well about creativity, I find, and I think that's really fun actually. And yeah, so that's it for the session today. I'm not sure how long I did, if I'm on time or not. So I think next workshop we have on Monday 19th at 7:30. It's about effective session design. And then we have on the 29th at 7, risk management, rule of 2, RIS, MED, coaching in challenging situations. So that's it for me. I don't know if Fan, you want to add something extra, or coaches, if you have questions, I'm here. So feel free to ask.
That was awesome, Eunice. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. No worries. My pleasure, actually.
I had a question, and that is that, I mean, you did kind of touch on it about the not through intensity, but volume. Considering the fact that this year in particular, kids probably have been a lot less active than last year. So last year when we started, there was a little bit of soccer and then a small break, and then they started. But this year is going to be, I guess, different or worse in that respect, that no one's doing anything. So maybe it would be helpful. I don't know if you have some suggested warm-ups to get kids going a bit of different age. I don't know, just thinking.
Yeah, like honestly, like warm-ups, I would do more about movement patterns right now, honestly. Things about basic movements like crawling, inchworm, bunny jumps, stuff like that. I tried last year with my group actually do a tic-tac-toe game where you make your squares like you do a tic-tac-toe, but then they need to dribble the ball, or you can have them running, and then once they stay in their square, they need to do high knees or heels back or something like that, squats as part of the warm-up. And then the first team that managed to make their line, then they're the winning team, and then they go back to the initial position.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I guess we'll have to just be creative in how we do that.
Yeah, I don't have right now like warm-up specific ideas, but we're going to do, I think, one session about as well. We'll be talking about those designing the trainings.
Okay, I think Graham
a bit more of that then.
Graham just saying that there's another preseason schedule session coming up. Graham, your hands up.
Yeah. Hey, Eunice, we're just about to send out the preseason physical preparation program. So we don't have that up right here and ready, but could you speak to that a little bit? Because you spent a lot of time on doing a preseason U9 to U12 program, as well as a U13 up program, which is fantastic. And that's going to go out tomorrow, actually.
Yeah. So yes. So I did the development of the program. So basically what I'm considering on that program is about working with the ball. So having passing and receiving, ball control. So those are two separate areas. Then I also added some strength training. You'll have part A and part B. So on the part A, normally is about basic movements, squatting, planking, and that's mainly bilateral exercises, and then on the part B is more unilateral exercises. So basically you're working first on one leg and then you're working on the other leg, right? Just to get them kind of back into the motion in some way as well with the ball. And then I also added some mobility exercises for them. So for example, I had one that is a gorilla crawl where they need to go into a deep squat and then they put their fists like that on the ground and they need to move like from side to side, basically as a gorilla would do, or the inchworm that you're here standing up on your hand, like on your feet, and then you walk down to the ground and you stretch out your arms into a plank position, and then you bring your legs to your hands, and then you keep going like that. So movement like that, just to make sure that they're kind of a little bit more ready than if they haven't done any activity, right? So there's some videos actually for those ones for the program that are on our YouTube channel right now. So you can also check them out already with explanation of the exercises.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll also send those out to all of the coaches as well, so they know what players are actually been engaged in doing.
Yeah, and actually I also added, now I remember, the conditioning part where I had played, well, I wrote down like what type of activities they can do to get their fitness up, like running or dancing, Zumba, I don't know, biking, those types of activities as well. So, and then the difference within the programs is that I think is 12 or 13 up, they will have more repetitions, and they can also use more by timing. So having that intensity up once they manage to have a good control, while the younger groups is more about the repetitions and the set, with a lower amount of them, obviously, right? I'm not having them do like 4 sets. I'm having them do like 2 sets, maybe three sets, depending on their level and their motivation.